How to stop shyness. So today we're going to talk about how to stop shyness. Before I get into it, I just want to define it as somebody who is fearful of having a social interaction, social connection because of some sort of insecurity that's happening within them. This is Tina Leader. I am the Conscious Closer. I help heart-centered entrepreneurs, coaches, and influencers close their prospects over the phone. Now, when I was growing up, I was really identified as the shy girl, and I really took on that role, really talked softly, and really didn't have any facial expressions, and just smiled a lot, and was so sweet, and really just didn't say hi or just didn't talk to anybody ever, ever. And that was basically me up until after high school. Now, I did act very differently with my friends once we became friends, but when it came to interactions with strangers, I was very much so taking on the role of the shy person. And that was really a big problem because once I graduated high school and I was in the real world and I wasn't protected by my social group and my friends who were ultimately super social and super popular, and they were really the reason why I even had a social life in the first place, is that they came up to me and became my friend and they initiated that. But if it wasn't for that, I would have literally had no friends because I was so scared of social interaction. And honestly, I didn't know about anything socially, and I'm still learning, to be honest. I'm still learning how to socially interact with certain people in different cultures, in different environments. I'm still learning those things. So take everything with a grain of salt and see what works for you. My first tip is really just a mental game, and it's to just stop identifying yourself as the shy person. Because when you do that, you really just give yourself an out. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. It was what it was for me when a friend would say, "Oh, Tina's just shy." It allowed me, it gave me permission to just step back and not be socially interactive, right? And so just don't give yourself that out. Don't give yourself that permission. You are not a shy person. You are just choosing to be that shy character, that shy role, but it is a choice. Tip number 2 is really something that I still struggle with, but it's to look at eye level. So when you're walking or going to the grocery store or whatever it is that you do throughout the day, really try to look at eye level. Now, I personally have a tendency to look up. Oftentimes when I'm walking down the street or whatever it is, I tend to just look up. That's my go-to, is looking up. And even in high school and throughout elementary school, I was the kid who always just looked up and had her head in the cloud. And I still have that problem sometimes. I had to be more conscious about it. But yeah, I know some people, they often look down. That's their go-to, right? Especially with cell phones nowadays. I think cell phone is becoming such a crutch to people, right? When you're feeling awkward or you're feeling uncomfortable, you just whip out that cell phone. And I'm going to challenge you and say, put that cell phone away. Even when you're just simply grocery shopping, if you're waiting in line, oh my goodness, waiting in line, put that cell phone away. I challenge you to do that in the next week. Just don't even look at your phone when you're waiting in line. If it's any time that it's just purely out of, I feel uncomfortable, or, I'm a little bit bored, right? I challenge you to at least put that phone away. Next step above that is, of course, interact with other human beings. But we'll get to that in a second. You don't have to do that, but really just look at your whole environment at eye level and observe and see what's out there. Not just people, but just everything, life, because life is out there. And it'll be great if you just observe your environment and just take it all in, because it's beautiful. My third tip, which really helped me ultimately break through the shyness when I was about 19 years old and I was going to film sets originally, meeting new people every day, and quickly realizing that I need to talk to people at the beginning of the day in order to not eat lunch alone at the end of the day. And really, it just came down to asking questions and asking questions to people. Now, this is easily done if you're in an environment in which something is structurally happening. So when I was going on film set, I would ask questions like, hey, does anybody have the call sheet? Or, hey, what time are we starting shooting today? Hey, how many scenes are we doing today? Hey, is the PA here yet? Where do we sign in right now? Hey, where's the wardrobe department, right? So it's really just informative questions that it doesn't matter if you already know, by the way. Doesn't even matter. It's really just a conversation starter. And if they do know, then that's great, because then you actually get that information. And then from there, it'll be easier to go on to another conversation, whether it's about weather. I know, cliche, but that's a thing. If that is where you need to be in the start, then that's where you need to be. Now, there's levels above that, but we'll get to that later. My fourth tip is to just not being afraid to fail. Easier said than done, but I really like what Tim Ferriss says, and it's a thought exercise, which is, what is the worst case scenario that can happen in this situation? And how bad is that really? So let's say I'm walking down the street and I see a person with their dog, and I wanted to say good morning, right? Worst case scenario is that maybe they look at me like I'm the craziest girl in the world for saying good morning to him, and he runs away with his dog because, I'm clearly a crazy person, right? That's the worst case scenario. And then I have to think, well, how bad really is that? And it's really not that bad, because, ultimately it's just a social rejection, and then I'm going to move on with my day, right? It's really not that bad. And so you can really apply that thought exercise to every scenario. Now, something that's a little bit more high stake or seemingly socially high stake is, let's say, a networking event, which, oh my goodness, I've had this happen so many times, especially being the youngest person at a business networking event, and clearly I am the newbie. Clearly I'm barely breaking in the industry, and a lot of people would brush me off. And this is like networking events in LA especially. They'll just look at you and then scuff, literally scuff, and walk away. But did I stop going to these networking events? Nope. I just kept coming back and kept coming back and kept being rejected over and over and over again. And you know what? Worst case scenario, I get no business cards, or no real connection, because business cards doesn't really matter. No real actual connection with everybody or anybody. And that's that. But I got to experience going to the event and trying and listening onto what people are saying, and hearing and taking notes on what other people's experiences are, and maybe learning from that. That's the worst case scenario. And so, I kept going back because I wasn't afraid to fail all over again and being rejected all over again. Because eventually, once I started doing that and they see that I'm coming back, oh, okay, well, who is this girl? Then I started to get more connections, and I was able to, make these introductions to other people, even though I myself didn't have much of an expertise at the time. I at least was now able to build a social connection with other people, and my asset was through that, at the time. So yeah, it's just a matter of keep trying, keep going, and not really ultimately caring if you fail, because the only reason why you would be truly failing is really not trying in the first place. I know, easier said than done sometimes, but you really have to go out there in order to break through the shyness in the first place. Okay, my final tip is really a little cheat sheet coming from the pickup artistry world, and that's what I like to call, or some other people like to call, peacocking. Hence the reason why I'm wearing my peacock earrings here today. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, I got it from my sister-in-law for my birthday, and it's funny because she doesn't know anything about me loving peacocks, but I really love the concept of peacocking because it really just opens the door for a conversation. And when I first started hearing about the concept, I immediately just, there's always one item that I'm wearing in an outfit, used to be anyway, that is something that stands out and that's something that somebody can at least comment on, negative or positive, like really doesn't matter, right? But it's something that's a conversation starter and you can laugh about it and then that conversation can lead to something else. It's just ultimately an easy in for a social interaction to actually happen. And it's a little cheat sheet, yes, and it's a psychological trigger, yes, but who cares? Ultimately, if there's a little bit of psychological trigger that will boost your confidence to get you to that next level, I'd say do it because there's no reason why we should hide behind the cloak of being shy, right? So I want to know what you guys thought about that. If you have a story in which a situation or event or certain environment where you didn't feel the most confident in and you felt a little bit shy and you felt a little bit pulled back and what you did to break through that. I would really like to know about that. Again, comment about it, like, share, and I would love you to subscribe so I can see you on the next episode.